The luxury handbag industry has one rule: the bigger the logo, the more you pay, and the less of that money ever touches the leather. This list breaks that rule completely. 8 brands chosen by one standard only: craftsmanship that justifies the price, leather that ages instead of cracking, and in 2 specific cases, bags that have done something almost nothing else in fashion can claim. They have gone up in value. Smart women already know which ones. You are about to find out why. Number 8. Polene launched in 2017 with a specific and deliberately disruptive argument that the Italian leather, the vegetable tanned hides, and the construction quality found in bags from Celine and Louis at $2,000 and above could be delivered at $300 to $500.
But that is known among the elite as the status brand. Hermès stands by itself.
The brand offers a variety of products, but its handbags are the most coveted of all. Celebrities, leaders, and even
dollars if the brand removed the wholesale markup, the advertising spend, and the flagship store overhead that those prices are primarily funding rather than the materials themselves. The Numero Un and Numero Dix bags use full-grain Italian leather that develops a genuine patina over years of wear, the kind of leather behavior that signals quality construction rather than synthetic coating breaking down into the cracked, peeling surface that lower-grade leather alternatives develop within a single year of regular use. The structured silhouettes echo the architectural minimalism that Celine built its reputation on under recent creative direction. Without the brand name that accounts for most of the price between the two. Polene sells directly to consumers through its own website, which means no department store markup, no wholesale margin paid to a distributor, and no licensing fees paid to a parent conglomerate whose portfolio includes dozens of other brands competing for the same advertising budget. The leather is sourced from the same tanneries supplying houses, charging 4 times more, a fact the brand discloses openly rather than obscuring behind vague language about artisanal heritage. The hardware, the zippers, and the interior lining all reflect a per-unit production investment that most brands at this price point, brands competing primarily on price rather than on material quality, do not make. Polene made a specific bet that the consumer who understood leather would notice the difference even without the name to validate it, and the brand's growth since launch suggests that bet was correct. For under $500, Polene delivers the structural and material argument that the luxury market has spent years insisting could not exist below the $1,000 threshold. The next brand made the same argument from a different country, with a different heritage, and an even more aggressive and more publicly documented price comparison against one specific, very recognizable competitor. Number 7. Strathberry is a Scottish leather goods brand most famous for one specific moment. When Meghan Markle carried the midi tote in 1978, the brand sold out within hours, and the comparison to Mulberry's Bayswater, a bag costing nearly 3 times as much and occupying a similar silhouette category, became impossible for the fashion press to ignore or explain away with the usual brand prestige justifications. The Strathberry Lana Ozette and midi tote use vegetable tanned leather sourced from European tanneries with a structured silhouette and a hardware finish that independent leather goods reviewers have placed directly against Mulberry's construction quality without finding a meaningful gap that the price difference would justify on material grounds alone. The bar and loop hardware closure, a signature design element, is produced to a tolerance and finish that several reviewers have specifically noted matches or exceeds the hardware quality found on bags at double and triple the price. At $400 to $600, Strathberry occupies the exact pricing gap between accessible leather goods and the 4-figure prestige tier, delivering construction that the brands above that gap charge a substantial premium to access without delivering a proportional increase in the actual leather weight, stitching density, or hardware plating quality. The stitching density, the leather weight, and the hardware, plating all reflect a per-unit production investment that most brands at this specific price point do not make. Because most brands at this price point are competing on volume rather than on the material argument Strathberry built its entire identity around. The brand's relative obscurity outside of the moment that made it famous is itself part of the value proposition. A bag that performs against a recognizable name without carrying that name's price premium is, by definition, a bag that most consumers have not yet been taught to want, which means it's the smart woman who finds it first is construction quality before the market price catches up to it. If this list is making you reconsider the bags you have been saving up for, hit the like button and subscribe right now. Every week, we go exactly this deep into the brands the luxury market would prefer you never compared against each other, because the comparison rarely favors the brand with the bigger advertising budget. Number 6. Mansur Gavriel. Mansur Gavriel built an entire brand identity around a single product. The bucket bag, launched in 2013, and the waitlists it generated within its first year of release, at a time when the accessible luxury category had very little precedent for that kind of organic, demand-driven scarcity outside of the established prestige houses. The brand's defining decision was vegetable-tanned Italian leather in a minimalist silhouette with almost no external branding, a deliberate rejection of the logo-forward approach that defined the luxury market at the time of launch, and that most competing brands at comparable price points were still leaning into heavily. The leather is sourced from tanneries in Tuscany using traditional vegetable tanning methods, a slower and more labor-intensive process than chrome tanning, that produce a leather surface developing color and texture changes with wear. The same patina development process associated with the most expensive heritage leather goods houses in Italy and France. The resale market for Mansur Gavriel bags has remained remarkably stable relative to the broader accessible luxury category, with well-maintained bucket bags retaining 60 to 70% of their original retail value years after purchase, a retention rate that competes directly with bags from houses, charging 3 and 4 times the original price, and that most accessible brands in the same category do not approach by a significant margin. A bag that someone purchased years ago and decided to sell is, in many documented cases, recovering most of what they originally paid, which is a performance most fast fashion and mid-tier accessible brands cannot offer at any price point. At $500 to $800, Mansur Gavriel delivers genuine vegetable-tanned Italian leather construction with a resale performance that most accessible luxury brands do not approach, in a silhouette so deliberately understated that the woman carrying it is making a statement, specifically to the people who already understand what they are looking at, rather than to the broader audience that a logo-forward bag is designed to communicate with. The next brand took the sustainability argument that has become a marketing buzzword across the entire industry, deployed by brands whose actual sourcing practices do not survive scrutiny, and built it into the actual sourcing and construction of every single bag it produces, with documentation to support every claim rather than the vague language that dominates this part of the market. Number 5. Demellier entered the market with a specific positioning: timeless silhouettes inspired by archival designs from heritage houses, constructed from vegetable-tanned leather with documented and traceable sourcing at price points that sit between accessible and the lower end of true luxury, occupying a category the brand essentially had to itself at the time of its founding. The Vancouver, Montreal, and Venice bags reference structural silhouettes that echo Celine, Chloe, and the Row in their clean lines and architectural handles, executed in leather that the brand sources from tanneries certified for environmental compliance under European regulatory standards that many heritage houses do not publicly disclose adherence to despite operating in the same supply regions and, in some cases, the same tanneries. The construction quality, particularly the hand-stitched edges and the structured base panels that maintain the bag's shape without internal, stiffening inserts that degrade, sag, or crack over time the way cardboard or low-grade plastic inserts do in cheaper structured bags, reflects a level of craftsmanship investment that the $400 to $700 price range does not typically deliver from brands without Demellier's specific sourcing transparency and the documentation that accompanies it on the brand's own website. For the consumer who wants the silhouette language of heritage European luxury, the clean lines, the structured handles, the architectural minimalism that defines what most people picture when they imagine a quietly expensive bag without the brand premium attached to it. Demellier delivers that translation with documentation behind every material claim rather than the vague sustainability language that dominates the broader, accessible luxury category, and that rarely survives a direct request for sourcing information. The next brand solved a problem that none of the brands above it have fully addressed. What happens when a luxury bag needs to function as a genuine daily work bag, carrying a laptop, a water bottle, and the accumulated contents of an actual working day, without sacrificing the leather quality and the silhouette that justifies in the first place? Number 4, Senreve was founded by engineers, not designers, and that origin has direct and traceable consequences for what the brand actually delivers relative to the luxury houses it competes against on price, because the design process started from a fundamentally different brief than the one most luxury handbag houses begin with. The Maestra bag, Senreve's signature product, was developed using a patented design process that prioritized functional architecture, laptop compartments sized to actual device dimensions, organizational pockets positioned based on how people actually search through bags, and convertible carrying configurations that allow the same bag to function as a tote, a crossbody, and a backpack, alongside the leather quality and silhouette refinement that luxury handbag buyers expect from a bag at this price. Most luxury bags in this price range were designed primarily as objects, with functionality retrofitted afterward through awkward interior pockets, added late in the design process. The Maestra was designed as a functional object first, with the luxury leather and finishing applied to a structure engineered for actual daily use, rather than for the photograph that sells the bag before anyone has tried to fit a laptop inside it. The Italian leather sourcing meets the same quality standards as the European heritage brands in this price tier, but the construction includes structural elements. The convertible strap system with reinforced attachment points designed to handle daily. Reconfiguration, the internal compartment dividers that maintain their shape under load, the laptop sleeve integration padded to actual protective standards that those heritage brands rarely build into their core silhouettes because their design process did not originate from a functional brief, and their customer is not assumed to be using the bag the way a working professional uses a bag every single day. At $600 to $1,200, Senreve delivers a bag that performs as a genuine daily use object, at a leather and construction quality that competes with brands charging significantly more for a silhouette that was never engineered to survive the actual demands of a working day, the commute, the laptop, the unexpected rain, the years of daily handling that most luxury bags at this price are not actually built to absorb. The next brand does not compete on price at all. It competes on something the entire luxury market claims to value and almost never actually delivers: the complete absence of a logo and a craftsmanship standard so consistent and so historically embedded in the brand's identity that the absence of the logo does not matter to the people whose opinion the brand actually cares about. Number 3. Bottega Veneta. Bottega Veneta built its entire modern identity around a single defiant statement: when your own initials are enough. No visible logo, no monogram. The intrecciato woven leather technique, developed by the house decades ago and still executed largely by hand, was the brand's only signature. and it was a signature that required the observer to actually know what they were looking at, which is precisely the point. The intrecciato weave is not a printed or embossed pattern stamped onto a single panel of leather to simulate texture. It is leather strips woven by hand into a structural lattice that distributes stress across the bag's surface more evenly than a single panel of leather, which is the reason intrecciato bags develop fewer stress, creases, and tears at handle attachment points over years of use compared to smooth leather bags from comparable price tiers, where the entire weight of the bag's contents is repeatedly concentrated on a small number of stitched seams. The cassette and andiamo bags use this construction in silhouettes that have remained consistent across leadership changes at the house, a stability that reflects the technique's role as the brand's foundation, rather than a seasonal design choice that gets reinvented every time a new creative director arrives. The leather sourcing meets the highest tier of Italian tannery standards, and the hand-weaving process means no two bags are produced through an identical mechanical process, a genuine point of differentiation in an industry where most handmade claims describe assembly, attaching pre-cut panels and pre-made hardware, rather than the construction of the material itself from individual strips of leather woven by hand. At $2,500 to $4,000, Bottega Veneta sits at the entry point of true luxury pricing, and the woman who carries it is communicating something specific to the small number of people who recognize the weave without needing to see a logo, to know what they are looking at, which is, in its own way, a far more exclusive signal than any monogram could ever be. Subscribe right now before we get to the final two brands, because what they represent is not just a smarter purchase. It is the difference between a bag that loses value the moment you walk out of the store and a bag that several documented cases have shown can be worth more years later than the day you bought it, a distinction that almost nothing else in fashion can claim. Number 2, The Row. The Row was founded by Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen in 2000. And 6 with a philosophy that ran directly counter to the entire logic of the luxury market they were entering. No logos, no seasonal hype cycles, no aggressive marketing campaigns, and price points justified entirely by material sourcing and construction time that the brand does not publicly explain, because it does not need to convince anyone who is already paying attention to what they are looking at. The Margaux bag, the Row's most recognizable silhouette, uses leather sourced at a quality tier that several fashion industry analysts have placed above the leather used by houses charging comparable or higher prices, with construction times per bag that reportedly run into multiple days of handwork per unit, a labor investment that most luxury houses producing at higher volumes, with global distribution networks and seasonal collection demands, cannot match regardless of their price point or their heritage. The resale market for the Row has become one of the most closely watched indicators in luxury fashion, specifically because Margaux bags have, in documented cases, sold on the resale market for prices at or above their original retail price, a performance that almost no other contemporary luxury handbag brand has achieved with comparable consistency across multiple bag sizes and leather options. This is not the resale performance of a bag depreciating slowly, the way a well-maintained car depreciates slowly. It is the zeitful performance of an asset, the kind of performance that gets cited in financial discussions about luxury goods as alternative investments rather than purely in fashion editorial coverage. At $3,000 to $6,000, the Row represents the quiet luxury argument taken to its most extreme and most financially validated conclusion. A brand that spent $0 on the kind of marketing that creates instant recognition, no celebrity campaigns, no logo placement, no seasonal advertising blitz, and built instead a product whose value is recognized specifically by the people whose recognition matters financially. The resale market, the collectors, and the small community of buyers who understand exactly what they are looking at without needing a campaign to tell them. One brand remains, It is the brand every other brand on this list is implicitly being compared against, whether the comparison is stated or not. The reference point the entire luxury handbag conversation eventually returns to. And it is the only brand in the entire luxury handbag industry that functions by documented financial analysis published in serious financial outlets rather than fashion magazines, as an appreciating asset rather than a depreciating purchase. Number 1, Hermès does not compete in the luxury handbag market in the conventional sense, because the conventional market is defined by depreciation, by a bag losing value from the moment it leaves the store the way a new car loses value the moment it leaves the lot, and Hermès, specifically through the Birkin and Kelly bags, has spent decades operating outside that dynamic entirely, to the point where the comparison to other handbags almost understates what is actually happening. The Birkin bag, named for Jane Birkin following a famous in-flight conversation with Hermès executive Jean-Louis Dumas in 1984, is constructed by a single craftsperson from start to finish, a practice the house has maintained since the bag's introduction across decades of production and despite enormous and growing global demand. Each Birkin carries a stamp identifying the individual artisan who made it, a level of individual accountability and craftsmanship that no other brand on this list, and very few brands in any luxury category, regardless of price, can claim with the same consistency across every single unit produced. The leather sourcing operates at a tier above what any other brand discussed here has access to, with Hermès maintaining its own tanneries and leather sourcing relationships that prioritize high quality over production volume in a way that publicly traded luxury conglomerates, accountable to shareholders for quarterly growth and unit volume targets, structurally cannot replicate, without compromising the very standard that makes the leather worth sourcing in the first place. The financial performance of Birkin and Kelly bags has been documented in multiple independent analyses, comparing their value retention against traditional investment categories including gold and the stock market over multi-decade periods, with several studies finding that certain Birkin configurations have outperformed both across the periods studied. This is not luxury marketing language, the kind of claim a brand makes about itself in its own materials. It is the conclusion of financial analysts evaluating Birkin resale data as an asset class on its own terms because the data, independent of any brand narrative, supports that classification. The waitlist system, the requirement to build a purchase history with the brand before being offered access to a Birkin or Kelly, which the broader market often characterizes as an artificial scarcity tactic designed purely to generate desire, functions in practice as a demand management system for a product whose actual demand, if fully met, would still likely exceed what the brand's hand construction model could supply without compromising the per-unit craftsmanship standard that justifies the asset-level resale performance in the first place. Removing the waitlist would not make more Birkins available. It would make the Birkin a different, lesser product made faster by more people with less individual accountability, and the resale market would reflect that immediately. Starting at approximately $10,000 and extending into six figures for exotic leather configurations, Hermès represents the absolute conclusion of the argument this entire list has been building. That genuine craftsmanship, genuine material sourcing, and genuine scarcity, not manufactured scarcity, but the scarcity that results from a production model that refuses to compromise on either, produces a product whose price reflects what it actually costs to make it this way, and whose value, unlike almost everything else in the luxury market, the market has independently confirmed rather than simply assumed. The next time you are standing in front of a bag, deciding whether the price is justified, ask one question. If you removed every visible brand marking, would the leather, the stitching, and the construction still justify what you are about to pay? The bag is the product. Everything else is the pitch. Click the next video on the left, because what we found there changes how you should be thinking about everything else in your closet, not just what you carry it in.